Dear friends, very good evening. Today I will be talking about an important humanitarian document, which is Refugee Influx Emergency Vulnerability Assessment, version 5, 2022. This is a technical report which is published in June 2022 by World Food Programme, and the main contents of this document is the present situation of the Rohingya camps in Cox'sBazar, Bangladesh. And I must thank to the World Food Programme for conducting this assessment. Today I will be precisely discussing about the document, and I have some observation and some notes to attract the attention of the host communities in Cox'sBazar, and I'll try to make my discussions to the point. May I now first lay out the main contents of the assessment. So I am naming the document's name again. This is REVA 5 in short, and the full form is Refugee Influx Emergency Vulnerability Assessment, and it's an assessment done by the World Food Programme, WFP. The main contents are introduction, methodology of the assessment, the study findings, which includes demographics, overall vulnerability, expenditures and economic vulnerability, food consumption, coping strategies, credit, local economy, asset ownership, multidimensional deprivation index, MDDI, resilience capacity in the face of shocks and stressors, assistance, other essential needs, satisfaction and self-reported needs. And there's an annex too. The assessment is done by WFP with the help of UNHCR, RIG, it's a local NGO, Save the Children, World Vision, Cox'sBazar Food Security Sector, FSS. And the executive summary of the assessment will give you a very clear picture about the field reality in the Rohingya camps and nearby host communities. The assessment says clearly that 95% of Rohingya refugees are still now depending on the humanitarian assistance provided by the humanitarian actors. The vulnerability of host community is still now high, like 2020, and it is 52%. Means 52% people from host communities, they are still now vulnerable in terms of their overall resilience or their overall vulnerability. Food consumption among Rohingya households still now remain poor, like 2021, which is 45%, and in 2022, this is 68% of Rohingya refugees, they consume LPF, means less preferred food, or LEF, less expensive food. In terms of The economic vulnerability, 94% Rohingya refugees are vulnerable, and the scale is minimum expenditure basket MEB, which is a World Bank scale to understand and scale household consumption. And the other scale is 71% of Rohingya households still now their main expenditure of their income is for food, and 65% of host community members they are investing most of their income is for food. And in terms of people's strategic coping with stresses, with emergencies, 64% Rohingya refugees need to take emergency measure to cope with emergencies and also to cope stresses. 26% of host community members do need to take emergency coping strategy or stress coping strategy. Means still now there is a significant presence of stressors or emergencies among the Rohingya refugees and host community members. The debt ratio is 79% among the Rohingya refugees and 77% among the host community people. And there's interesting information in terms of labor force participation. 18% of the host community people are not getting their opportunity to get involved in income generating activities, which is not that much high in the Rohingya refugees. 50% of Rohingya refugees cannot get engaged in income generating activities, which means 50% of them can take part in any kind of income generating activities. Another interesting information is 27% of Rohingya households sell their assistance. The assistance they get, they sell back to the market. And the ratio is 27%. So this is the overview. And I think now I'll go for my critical discussion to shed light on the REVA assessment from a host community point of view. First of all, there is a significant weakness in the assessment. The first weakness is this assessment is an assessment which is done with a very limited, selected number of participants. Practically speaking, it's really impossible to engage the entire Rohingya refugee community in any assessment or the entire host communities in any assessment. But it's possible to engage a certain and a considerable, a significant number of participants in the assessment. So the assessment can engage local stakeholders who are the influencers, stakeholders, power players, civil societies, and other media who can give more insights and understanding to reach the maximum beneficiaries and also the wider thoughts of people and the impacted population. The second weakness is the assessment is published in the website, but it's not published widely and it's not circulated in different channels and which are locally available in Bangladesh and in Cox'sBazar. Apart from this discussion, my second part of the discussion is to add the points of views of the host community people. One interesting point I want to mention for the first time, and this is the participation ratio of Rohingya refugees in income generating activities and participation ratio of host community members in income generating activities. The REVA assessment clearly outlines that 18% of host community members cannot get engaged in any income generating activities, and 50% of Rohingya refugees can take part. What does it mean? It clearly means that where Rohingya refugees are getting all their basic needs through humanitarian assistance from humanitarian actors. But host community members are not getting all basic needs. Maybe the most vulnerable population are getting some minor supports from the humanitarian actors, but not in a consolidated way. But Rohingya refugees are receiving humanitarian assistance in a very consolidated and planned way. On the other hand, 18% means a score less than 20% of host community members are not getting access to the labor market. Why? The question is not tough, it's easy, and it's easy to address the question too. Practically speaking, Rohingya refugees are taking share of the labor market of the host community members. Now let's come to the next point. My next point is the upliftment of lifestyle of the host community members. A huge portion of host community members are indebted. 77% of them are indebted. It means their level of consumption is not increased. Their participation in the economic activities has been lessened, and their opportunity to innovate the opportunities to get engaged, to proliferate their labor opportunities, their income generating activities are somehow stopped or somehow reduced. Another statistics will give a clear outline about the suffering and vulnerability of the host community members, and which is 59% host community members opine that their first priority is food, when a big portion of people are busy, are struggling to manage their basic needs. It means they cannot pursue the dreams of luxury like education, higher education, uh, rich food, good housing, preparation for emergencies, and also to cope with emergencies and to avoid unexpected circumstances like medical emergencies, like the other kind of financial pressure from natural disaster, from pandemic, from political unrest. So this is a significant issue. I have also two or three observations and recommendations for the assessment task force or team or assessing organization. These are these assessment can include agriculture, nature conservation, species conservation, girls' education and higher education among the host communities, early childhood development, waste management, dust management, soil protection, surface water preservation, groundwater issues, water purification, water networking, and the local entrepreneurship and soft skill development of host community members. If the the assessment can include these issues in future, I hope this assessment will be more inclusive one and will be clearly outlining the needs and the situation and the progress or any kind of deviation from the present situation in the host communities and Rohingya communities. Thank you. I hope I will come back again with another podcast. Thank you very much. Good night.